The daughter of a tenant who had just been evicted tried to scam someone out of $1,200 by pretending like she was the landlord and trying to rent it out to another person. Now she has been arrested. I'm Tony, and this is Real Estate Investing and Landlord News. All right, so I have an interesting article for you today, and it's coming out of the state of Florida. So I talk about a lot of these scams that, these people are trying to use that are really hurting landlords where, landlords, they can become victims. Sometimes it's other tenants or other potential tenants who become the victims. And in this case, it was a person who is looking for a place to rent. They look on Facebook Marketplace, they see an apartment, and they contact the person who put that listing out there. And guess what? That person is actually a scammer. And unfortunately, because this person had access to the apartment, well, they were able to come off as a scammer and, no one be the wiser until that tenant, the new tenant, figured out that, hey, something just isn't quite right here. Okay, so this didn't directly have to do with the landlord, but I do want to tell landlords that, hey, you have to watch out for this sort of thing, because you might come back to your unit one day and find, hey, there's somebody living in here, and this person, it would be a true victim, not the scammers that pretend like they had gotten a lease from somebody. No, this person would be a victim, and you would also be a victim because you would have somebody in your unit possibly doing excess damage, somebody that you might have to go through the eviction process with. Okay, so this is a bad situation overall, not just for the people who are scammed, but also for the landlords involved. Okay, so yeah, this is crazy. I'm glad that they were able to get this lady and arrest her, but man, this is something that we all have to look out for. When I talk about keeping a close eye on your properties when they're vacant, I mean, I am dead serious about that. That's one of my biggest fears, that somebody's gonna go up in there and if not, start squatting, then at least break in there, steal the pipes out of the walls, the appliances, anything they can get their hands on, okay? Or maybe they'll just go in there, break in and use the place as a drug house. But that's why I say, keep an eye on your properties, because these sort of things are happening. These scams, they're common nowadays, and it's really an unfortunate thing. So before I get into the article, go ahead, hit the like, subscribe button, maybe leave a comment down below and let me know what you think. Have you ever had a person, get scammed at one of your properties? A person who thought that, hey, they were getting this great deal on a rental. Yeah, I'm just curious if other landlords have experienced this before, okay? So anyway, let me get into this article. It's an interesting little story, and it's not very long, so let's get into it. This article is coming from iHeart.com, and it says, woman allegedly rents out her mother's evicted apartment on Facebook. Yeah, so this wasn't the mother directly involved, or maybe it was the mother directly involved. My guess is that, yeah, the mom was part of this scam, okay? But anyway, let's get into the article and see what it says. Fort Myers, Florida. A Southwest Florida woman has been arrested on fraud charges after she leased her mother's already evicted apartment through Facebook Marketplace. The Fort Myers Police Department reports that the victim met 33-year-old Jasmine Everett and paid her over $1,200, believing that she was securing a unit on Royal Palm Avenue in Fort Myers. However, as the victim began her move-in preparations, neighbors alerted her that the apartment was already under eviction and not available for rent. So good looking out to those neighbors, okay? They're like, hey, the last tenant who was up in here is still being evicted right now. So I don't know what's going on, but you are probably getting scammed, okay? So, I'm glad that the neighbors stepped up and said something, because a lot of these cases, the neighbors, they just won't say anything, or they don't care, and they'll assume that everything is on the up and up. But obviously in this case, the neighbors stepped up. They let this woman know. The woman let the landlord, the authorities know, or whoever, and we're able to get this problem resolved, okay? But here's my suggestion to tenants, okay? If you are looking at a unit, an apartment, a house, whatever, right? And you're like, man, this deal is too good to be true. Well, it probably is, okay? $1,200 a month rent in Fort Myers, Florida, right? I thought Fort Myers was a pretty expensive place. Okay, very nice climate, very desirable area, and it sounds like this place is probably, $1,200 a month would be a very, very good deal. So if it's too good to be true, double check everything, okay? Make sure that this is a legitimate thing. I mean, sometimes, yeah, there are good deals available, but man, so many people have been scammed lately. I'd be scared to death that it would happen to me and that I would end up losing thousands of dollars, So yeah, just be very careful. On December 5th, authorities launched an investigation and determined that Everett had utilized a fictitious profile on Facebook Marketplace to advertise the apartment, which was in the midst of an eviction procedure. On December 22nd, law enforcement located Everett near the apartment complex and took her into custody. She was arrested on fraud charges and was transported to the Lee County Jail for further proceedings. And I also want to give a shout out here to the police, okay, the law enforcement who was in charge of this. A lot of the times, there is no investigation into this sort of thing. It's just something they'll just write a report on, okay? But they took the time, and you know what? It didn't take a lot of effort in order to figure out who was involved, what was involved, and that a crime had been committed. It didn't take a lot of effort, okay? And yet, a lot of the times when I read these stories, it's the exact opposite, okay? They know exactly who did it, or they could easily figure out exactly who did this, and they don't want to, like, oh no, this isn't worth our time and our efforts, okay? We're too busy, we're the police, but we don't care, right? And that's why these people continue to do this sort of thing. They continue to commit fraud because they know there's no enforcement actions, okay? If this same sort of thing happened in California, believe me when I say it would be very unlikely that the police would do anything. Very unlikely. And I hate saying that sort of thing. I'm a law enforcement officer, right? And I understand that law enforcement is very busy, right? But these crimes here, these are, just the kind of crimes that will make people want to leave. They don't want to stay in your state anymore. That's why you see an exodus of the population. When you see minor crimes such as this that are not being enforced, these are the kind of crimes that impact everyone. Okay, not the gangs and the drugs and the big problems that impact a small portion of the population. No, these are the kind of crimes, like when you go out and you see your car has been broken into every day, or all the neighbors up the street have had their cars broken into, or their catalytic converters stolen, or maybe your house has been broken into. Those are the kind of things that drive people out of your state, okay? Yeah, gang violence is bad, right? But, it's usually between two groups of people involved in other sort of stuff, right? And a lot of the population has nothing to do with that and will never encounter those people. Okay, so, that's not the kind of thing that is driving people out of the state. It's these property crimes. It's this fraud. It's the minor stuff like this, the so-called minor stuff. When it's not enforced, it gives people the feeling that, hey, all this money I'm spending, all this tax money I'm spending, and nobody gives a darn about me. And the quality of living here sucks, so I'm going to go somewhere where I'm treated better. So, I'm glad that the police stepped up. I'm glad that they did something about it. And, unfortunately, these people, they're still out there. So, as a landlord, like I said, keep an eye on your property. As a tenant, make sure you double check and verify everything. I am 100% willing, if I have a potential tenant who wants to move into my property, to show them my deed to prove that I own the place, okay? And if a property manager, if one of my property managers asks and says, hey, can we show proof that, you're the owner? I'll be perfectly willing to do that. So don't feel like, hey, well, that would be asking too much and I'm going to pass on you as a tenant. If you're a good tenant, if I want you in my property, and then I'm perfectly willing to prove to you that I am the legitimate owner so that you feel confident that you're not being scammed.